Elaine Douglas never missed her calls. Every evening, without fail, someone in her family heard her voice. Sometimes it was just a quick, "I'm home." Sometimes it was a longer conversation about errands, plans, or what she cooked the next day. But silence was something Elaine simply didn't leave behind. So when night came and her phone kept ringing with no answer, it didn't feel like a delay. It felt wrong. Earlier that day, Elaine had left home for what should have been a simple, ordinary drive. No suitcase, no emotional goodbyes, no sign she was closing a chapter of her life. She was dressed for a normal day, carrying the personal items she always took with her. Everything about that morning said she would be back, but she never arrived where she was going. By the next day, concern turned into fear. Family members tried retracing her steps. They drove the same roads, called hospitals, contacted friends. When her car couldn't be found, police were notified, and Elaine Douglas officially became a missing person. Officers began with what made the most sense. They checked her home. There were no signs of a struggle. Nothing missing except Elaine and her vehicle. Her phone had gone quiet. Her bank account showed no unusual activity. No one had seen her upset. No one had heard her talk about leaving. To investigators, this was the most troubling kind of case. A woman who didn't disappear, but vanished. They mapped out her usual routes. The road she took often. The shortcut she preferred. Patrols drove miles of pavement looking for an abandoned car, skid marks, anything out of place. Flyers went up. Her description was shared. Tips trickled in, but none of them led to Elaine. Days passed, then weeks, and soon, the question no family ever wants to face began whispering through every search effort. How does a person disappear with a car? By the end of the first month, there was still no crash site, no witnesses, no vehicle, no explanation. And somewhere, hidden in plain sight, the answer was already waiting. But no one knew where to look. With no trace of Elaine or her car, investigators widened the search. What started as a local missing person report quickly turned into a regional effort. Nearby towns were alerted. Hospitals were contacted again. Tow yards were checked. Even remote back roads were driven slowly, mile by mile, by volunteers who believed the car had to be somewhere. Detectives rebuilt Elaine's final day. They confirmed the time she left home. They reviewed who she spoke to. They pulled phone records to track the last signal her device ever sent. The location wasn't far from where she was supposed to be, but it wasn't specific either. Just a general area that included highways, wooded roads, and, importantly, several large bodies of water. At first, water wasn't their main focus. Most missing car cases end with a visible crash, a guardrail, broken branches, tire marks, something that tells searchers where to look. But every route Elaine could have taken was clean. No evidence of a roadway accident. No debris. No reports from other drivers. Her family struggled with the uncertainty. Some feared she had been taken. Others clung to the hope that she had survived and was unable to contact anyone. Search groups organized on weekends, combing fields and tree lines. Divers were even brought in to check a few obvious spots. But the bodies of water were large, dark, and deep, without a specific target. Searching them felt like looking for a single coin at the bottom of a stadium. As months passed, the case slowed. Elaine's file moved from active emergency to open investigation. Detectives revisited it periodically, re-interviewing witnesses, rechecking tips. One rumor suggested she may have left town. Another claimed someone had seen a similar car in a different state. Each lead was followed. Each one ended the same way. Nothing. No proof of a new life. No proof of a crime. No proof of an accident. Just absence. Eventually, years went by. Technology changed. Officers retired. New detectives inherited the file. And Elaine Douglas quietly became what law enforcement calls a cold case, a mystery preserved in paperwork, waiting for something new to give it breath again. No one imagined that something new wouldn't come from a person, but from the water. The break didn't come from a confession. It didn't come from a forgotten witness. It came from a survey. Years after Elaine vanished, routine work was being done around a nearby reservoir. Crews were using modern scanning equipment to map the lake bed, tools far more powerful than what had existed when Elaine first went missing. As the images formed, one shape stood out. It was subtle, easy to miss. A long, unnatural outline resting where rock and sediment should have been. But to trained eyes, it didn't look like nature. It looked manufactured. Authorities were notified, and specialists were brought in. When the equipment was focused back on the area, the shape became clearer. It was the size of a car, and it had been there a very long time. The location sent a chill through the investigation team. The reservoir sat within the wider zone of Elaine's last known phone signal. It wasn't a place anyone had ever seriously searched before. The water was deep, murky, and its shoreline had changed over the years. What may have once been an open slope could now be concealed beneath higher water levels. A recovery operation was planned. Divers entered first to confirm what the scan suggested. And beneath layers of silt and time, they found it. A vehicle, upright, intact, silent. When cables were finally secured and the slow process of lifting began, people gathered along the shoreline. Some were officials, some were workers, and some were members of the public who had learned that something important was coming out of the water. As the front of the vehicle broke the surface, one detail became unmistakable. The color, the shape, the damage pattern. It matched Elaine Douglas's missing car. For the first time in years, the case was no longer about where she might be. It was about what the reservoir had been hiding, and the answers were finally close enough to touch. Once the vehicle was fully recovered, it was immediately secured as evidence. Water poured from every opening as it was placed onto a flatbed and covered. What had been invisible for years was now the center of the investigation. The license plate confirmed it. It was Elaine's car. Inside, divers and forensic teams found what everyone feared, and what the family had prepared themselves for, but could never truly accept. Elaine was still in the driver's seat. Time and water had taken their toll, but the position of the vehicle told an important story. There was no sign it had been pushed, no evidence of a violent struggle inside, no indication anyone else had been with her. The front of the car showed damage consistent with leaving the roadway and descending into the reservoir. Investigators examined the surrounding area above the waterline. With modern mapping, they were able to see what the shoreline had looked like years earlier. And suddenly, everything made sense. The road had once run closer to the water. There had been no proper barrier at that point. At night, or in poor visibility, a driver could easily miss the curve, especially someone distracted for only a second, especially someone who believed they were on a familiar, safe stretch. Tire trajectory analysis suggested Elaine's car had drifted off a road and continued forward without braking hard. Not the pattern of someone fleeing, but someone who never realized danger was directly ahead. The reservoir had done the rest. Once submerged, the car would have disappeared quickly. Murky water, no floating debris, no obvious splash visible from the road. Within hours, silt and vegetation would begin claiming it. Within months, it would look like part of the lake bed. For years, it waited there, only yards from places people fished, boated, and passed by. The investigation now shifted from searching for Elaine to understanding her final moments, and finally, to telling her family the truth. The call no family ever truly prepares for came quietly. After years of unanswered questions, investigators finally sat with Elaine's loved ones and told them what had been found beneath the reservoir surface. They explained where the car had been, how close it had always been, how the road once ran differently, how one unmarked edge, one unguarded stretch may have changed everything. There was no dramatic confrontation, no hidden suspect, no double life uncovered, just a simple, devastating truth. Elaine Douglas had not run away. She had not started over. She had not been lost to some distant place. She had been there all along, a routine drive, a familiar road, a moment no one could rewind. The cause was ruled an accidental departure from the roadway, followed by submersion. The reservoir that had looked so peaceful for so many years had quietly held the answers the entire time. For her family, the discovery didn't erase the pain, but it ended the nightmare of not knowing. It gave them a place to grieve, A place to speak her name out loud again, not as a question, but as a memory. They could finally bring her home. Today, when people pass that stretch of water, it looks like any other. Calm, still, reflecting the sky. But for those who know Elaine's story, it will always carry a different meaning. It is a reminder that disappearances don't always look like mysteries at first. Sometimes they look like an ordinary day that never got its ending. If Elaine's story moved you, please take a moment to like this video. It truly helps these stories reach more people who care. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next case we uncover. And in the comments, I want to ask you something simple but important. How many answers do you think are still hidden in places people pass every day? Your thoughts keep these conversations alive.